Hello, fellow mech warriors, Mage Leader here. Welcome back to the Battlemech Primer. As I'm sure you've noticed by now, there are a lot of different kinds of battlemechs. The modern battlefield is a place of ever-shifting goals, strategies, and circumstances. It is a chaotic place where each decision generates changes that can and do reverberate across an entire warfront. Survival in such a place is often determined by little more than sheer luck, but while nothing can hope to match the raw power of unfiltered random chance, there are things that can be done to influence an outcome. In our modern world, adaptability is favored highly for this reason. When warfare is so unpredictable, it pays to have a solution for every problem readily available. Military kit is often made to resemble a Swiss Army knife in its implementation, giving combatants the tools they need to succeed, no matter what they encounter in the field. This mentality applies to all aspects of the military-industrial complex. History is replete with attempts to build wonder machines that can do it all, with varying degrees of success. Sometimes you get the multi-role aerotech fighter, and other times you end up with whatever the fuck this thing was trying to be. When it comes to battlemechs, the same rules often apply. On this channel, I've covered a few machines that excel in multiple roles, and indeed there are many examples of successful multi-role vehicles throughout history, but that doesn't make them superior to dedicated platforms in and of itself. Sure, the Zeus is a sophisticated and versatile mech, the Crusader has a variant for every mission profile under the suns, and the Battlemaster is a true masterpiece of engineering, but sometimes a military's specific needs are best served by something simple, unrefined, and brutally effective at one specific task. With that in mind, I would like to introduce you to today's battlemech, the Longbow. At first glance, the Longbow appears to be a joke, a battlemech concept that wouldn't have made it off the drawing board. Kind of like whatever the fuck this monstrosity is supposed to be. I can assure you, however, that it is no laughing matter. It is indeed a walking box of missiles. 50 of them per trigger pull, to be exact. It's 85 tons, has a top speed of 54 kph, and yes, it does indeed need every one of its 22 heatsinks to keep itself from exploding. What you see is what you get. The Longbow was first produced in 2480 by the Battlemech factories of the Free Worlds League, specifically Lockenberg-Hawley Industries. This was the early days of battlemech design, the wild west of bipedal arms procurement. These were the days when the Mackie was still considered by many of the great houses to be the gold standard of mech design, and mechs were still being judged by their ability to handle that original model. Bigger, better machines had come out since then, but there was still a great deal of speculation as to what a battlemech was even supposed to be. The same year would see the birth of the Commando, the first ever light mech, in the Lyran Commonwealth, which would create the true Steiner Scout Lance. For the armies of the Free Worlds League, however, military thinking still largely trended toward the idea that the best way to innovate on the battlemech concept was to make it bigger. From the very beginning, the Longbow was meant for the fire support role, a highly specific task, and one for which a blueprint already somewhat existed. The Terran hegemony, the very birthplace of the battlemech, had found success with their archer design, but Lockenberg-Hawley wasn't content to simply copy-paste the machine like so many others had done with previous designs. They took one look at the walking missile launcher and said, yeah, that's cool and all, but what if it walked less and had even more missiles? The result was a brutishly simple design, one intended to be as straightforward and utilitarian as possible. The Archer's largely superfluous arms were axed entirely. The primary missile launchers were moved from the torso mounts and shifted outwards. The iconic missile buckets, you know, those things that looked like someone duct-taped a pair of Donkey Kong barrels to the sides, those things serve a purpose beyond making the Longbow look like the galaxy's most hardcore subwoofer. The idea was to make launchers that could traverse upwards and downwards, increasing the versatility of the firing arcs and, at least in theory, providing better accuracy and range. In practice, those things are determined more so by the quality of the missile than the angle at which they're fired, but the ability to shoot directly upwards has occasionally proven useful against aerospace targets. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The Longbow wasn't just built to fire missiles better than the Archer, it was also meant to fire more of them. Few people in their right mind look at a pair of LRM-20s and decide that it still isn't enough missiles, but Free Worlds League engineers are rarely, if ever, in their right mind. And so the Longbow also has a pair of LRM-5s. because fuck you and the grid coordinates you currently occupy. The original variant boasted a single small laser as a backup, though most modern versions have swapped the engine for a smaller model in order to fit 2 medium lasers and extra heatsinks, vastly improving the overall effectiveness of the mech. The initial variant wasn't without its problems. It tended to run hot, it had virtually nothing to defend itself with at close range, and there was very little glamour in piloting such an ugly machine. Something that hadn't been taken into account during the design process was the mindset of a mech warrior. Mech warriors perceived themselves as knights in shining armor, gallant heroes upon mighty steeds who face one another in contests of skill and daring. Being the guy who sits on the sidelines, constantly bombarding the enemy from afar, was seen by many as cowardly. Fortunately for Lockenberg-Holly, arms procurement isn't governed by mech warriors. While it wasn't popular with the men and women who would operate them, it was popular with their superiors. The Longbow offered mobile fire support in unprecedented volumes, a welcome addition to any arsenal in an age where battlemechs were constantly growing in size and armor protection. The Star League would put the machine to good use on battlefields across the Inner Sphere, where it would make a name for itself as one of the most feared battlemechs in the galaxy. While not intimidating in the traditional sense, seeing one appear on your radar was a good sign that it was time to take cover. These things were reported to block out the suns with an alpha strike, and you did not want to be on the receiving end of what it could dish out. Even at close range, the Longbow is surprisingly well protected for its role, and its survivability, while not on the level of many other assaults, is notably solid despite a lack of case to guard against ammo detonations. Taking one down requires firepower, and bringing enough of that into close range without losing a few limbs on the way in is no easy task. The success of the Longbow led to rapid adoption and a procurement by the other great houses. The Capellan Confederation in particular took a shine to the Battlemech. Starcore had been producing the mech under license on behalf of Star League from their primary plant on Fletcher, a world that would end up under Capellan control during the Succession Wars. They would produce the machine for House Liao for centuries, and its simple construction, straightforward doctrine, and overall power made it an attractive option for the chronically penniless successor state. This has kept the Longbow in circulation despite the widespread destruction of the Succession Wars, making it one of the more ubiquitous battlemechs in existence. The Longbow has changed very little over the years, but that's hardly surprising. I mean, look at the thing. It's a missile boat. What else are you going to do with it? Once you start strapping cannons, PPCs, or giant laser banks onto an set of missiles, is it even a Longbow anymore? The simple fact of the matter is that it's not much good for anything else. It has one purpose, a niche it was purpose-built to fill, and pushing it outside its comfort zone is likely to end about as well as trying to win a foot race in an urban mech. But there is no denying that the one thing it does better than just about anything else. Taking a hit from a Longbow is kind of like standing naked in a hailstorm, except that each chunk of ice also explodes when it hits you. For hundreds of years, mech warriors have perished to the dulcet tones of... While it's not a sexy mech, Longbow operators tend to have some of the highest body counts in the Inner Sphere, the kind of KD ratio that most mech warriors can only dream of. When properly supported with covering fire and a couple of tag lasers or narc beacons, the Longbow becomes a grim reaper. It can outright remove medium and smaller mechs in an instant, and even the heaviest assault mechs are going to struggle handling the full brunt of a Longbow attack. It has one job, and it is beyond competent in that role. It's a fire support platform so potent that it rewrote the book on what the term even entails. The Archer and Catapult may have pioneered mechanized fire support, but the Longbow is the machine that demonstrated just how powerful the tactic can be when taken to its logical conclusion. Today the Longbow lives on, and unlike many other battlemechs of its vintage, it's needed very little in the way of modernization. There have been the usual modifications and upgrades with expensive Endo-Ferro models available for the wealthy and ambitious, but the simple fact is that the old mass production variant is still viable, even in a world of pulse lasers and double heat sinks. Sure, modern armor is better than it used to be, but nobody's yet devised a set that can withstand sustained fire from 50 long-range missiles. To this day, it's not uncommon to find fire support lances that combine Helm or even Clan machines with one or more old Longbows. Much like the weapon that gifted the mech its name, it's a timeless piece of technology that never truly stopped being useful. a weapon that has long outpaced its expected shelf life. So that's the Longbow. It isn't good at very many things. It can't brawl, though some have tried. It can't run, and it can't jump. It's not a versatile machine by any metric, but it doesn't need to be. It's a team player, and when placed in capable hands with equally capable comrades, it will likely be the scariest thing on the field. It has set the gold standard for its intended purpose, and while other mechs have tried to supplant it, for over half a millennium, no one of them has truly succeeded. It's big, it's heavy, and it's simple. This is the Longbow. It shoots missiles. Any questions? Thank you all so much for watching, and special thanks to my mech warriors on Patreon. Lord Pterodax, Acreon, Hadrian Solus, Lucen Dacier, Desert Dragon, Lil Grunt 1, Rostran Targo, Zero, Sean Herr, Delphino, Miguel Batacan, Alexander Heimerl, Chef Sung, Delta 505, Military Sticks, Spacer, Rivius, Kyle Vidori, Metal Dragonar, Tim Cook, Tomoyaga Tudor, Gary Moses Sweeney, Admiral Chirino, The Single Way Out, Gate Castle, Z, Julian Tumkala, Paul DeVere, and The Fighting Fish. If you enjoyed this video, leave your feedback down below, and join us again next time when we take another look at another mech and another great house. Until then, this is Mage Leader, signing off.